Hey y'all, my name is Taylor. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. In this video, I'm going to be discussing the books I read in October and November. So first of all, I'd like to say that if you've been watching for my channel for any period of time, you may notice that I am differently positioned than usual. We rearranged my living room to make the Christmas tree fit, so now I have this really cool book nook that wouldn't have been possible before. So I have my recliner set up next to my bookshelves. That's usually where I film. And then I'm in between the Christmas tree, so I'm very excited about this position. So I thought I'd see what the filming angle looks like this go around. I may change it later, but that's why I am differently placed. I am also, disclaimer, I am some sort of sick, I think. I don't know if it's a cold or just my body saying how much it hates winter. I feel like we didn't even really get a fall. It just went straight into freezing cold temperatures. So who knows what's going on with me. So if you hear it in my voice, I apologize. If there's snippety cut out bits of this video, I apologize because I may have to take care of things related to being sick. But I did really want to film this because I had the time and I really wanted to talk about some books. So I have 14 books to talk to y'all about, and I rated them ranging from 3 stars to 5 stars. I had a really good time for both of these 2 months. So the first book I read was actually a sequel. So I mentioned the first book in my last recent reads, which was Cities of Smoke and Starlight by Allie Ernest. So book 2, which I read in October, was Realms of Wrath and Ruin by Allie Ernest. So this series, it is a series, is a sci-fi romantasy, so it has elements of both, or all three of those genres. So it's a very interesting mashup. And the world is very interesting. So what this is about, I can only explain book 1 because book 2 is a continuation of book 1. It's about Hallie, and she is a scholar. Actually, let me backtrack and say that this is set 1,000 years from when Earth was perished. So humans have since gone on, explored, colonized this planet, and Hallie, she is studying the indigenous species of the planet who has since disappeared. So she's kind of like the expert on this people, and she is asked to go on this secret special mission as the expert for this group of people. Also part of this secret special mission is a pilot named Case. He's kind of like a hothead, like arrogant type character. Think like, like Han Solo type of thing. So they meet prior to this mission, and it was not a good meeting. They did not like each other. They butted heads, but they are thrown together in this mission, and things go from there. So I talked before in the other recent reads video, the last one, that I wasn't a huge fan of the romance just because the banter was a little bit too on the rude side for me, but I did grow to like them more as characters as the story went on. So for book 2, I like them even better as characters, and I could kind of put in the back of my mind, away from the forefront, of their origin and like how they treat each other in the past. So I was able to swallow their romance a little bit better in this one. I will say, this one I rated 3 stars. I think it's had more of a second book syndrome, like a connector between book 1 and book 3. Book 3 is coming out in 2025. Because I feel like the first half of this book, nothing really happened that was super interesting. Like the good stuff didn't happen until halfway through. Also, just a side note that this is a very, 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 very slow burn series. To give you perspective, the first kiss does not occur until this book, which is the second book, till like the last quarter. Which is fine with me. I'm not used to reading that slow of a burn before, so it is what it is. I just thought I'd mention it in case you're curious. But also, I mentioned in the last recent reads as well, The world building is very interesting. It's very unique, so I'm intrigued. However, I feel like the author, in an effort to be mysterious and leave the reader questioning, I feel like the way things are described, it assumes you know too much. But then it explains things that end up being more confusing than explanative. Explanative. Anyways, yeah, it could just be my ability to comprehend. I don't know if it's a me problem or what, but that being said, there is magic in this story, but I would describe it more as like gifts that are given. The magic is occurring in this native species. That's where the magic is occurring. So I don't know if it's like their special type of science or, you know, that type of thing, but there are some gifts that are, it's said that the god of this species gave to them in order to serve the god better. So it's a little confusing still, even after reading book 2. So I'll just say that it's not like, I wouldn't describe it as like witchcrafty or anything, that side of things. It's more kind of like along the lines closer to like superhero, like they have gifts type of thing. Anyways, so this series is secular. So I would rate the Christian fiction rating a 0 out of 3. It's clean. They use like substitute cuss words like stars and stuff like that. So yeah. Next book I read was Living Lies by Natalie Walters. This is a Christian romantic suspense. I rated it 3 stars. It is about this young woman who moves to Georgia. So shout out to Georgia. I am next door in South Carolina, so I always like seeing Southern set stories. But anyways, she moves to Georgia after her husband passed away. She has a young son. And she discovers this body in the woods, and she meets this cop who just moved to the town as well. So they strike up a romance. But they're trying to figure out what happened to this girl. The main girl is targeted, and it may or may not be because of her finding that body. This book does deal with some hard topics like PTSD and suicide, but I think the author handled it very well. I'm pretty sure this is a debut novel. I could be wrong, but I thought she handled the topics very well. Also, the main guy, Charlie, he is like the gold star of what a Christian man should look like. He is a very well written guy character. He's one of my favorite main guys now. He's such a good guy. I did have one problem that I'll mention briefly. So I forget what her name is. It's escaping me at the moment. But the main girl, as I mentioned, she's a widow. And she starts to have feelings for Charlie. And then they start dating. But she wears her wedding ring the entire book. She never takes it off. And I had a problem with that. I felt like that was wrong. I feel like that's part of your processing. Like if you're ready to move on to the next relationship, I feel like you would take your ring off. I don't know. Maybe that's just a me thing, but I just had a problem with that. As far as the Christian faith rating, it had light everyday faith. It is Christian fiction, so I rated a 1 out of 3 for the Christian faith rating. The next set of books that I read, because this is part of a series, trilogy, is the Kaylee Quinn Profiler series. Book 1 is Mind Games by Nancy Mel. This series is about an FBI profiler, and she's kind of very unique. She kind of reminds me a lot of like Sherlock Holmes, where she is very, very good at what she does. She sees things that people don't see. She sees right through people. She can read people. She's kind of almost has like a supernatural type level gift, but it's not superhero powers, obviously, but this is set in the real world. But she's that good. She creates profiles. Her specialty is serial killers to help catch the bad guy type of thing. And this one is seemingly targeting this new serial killer is seemingly targeting Kaylee because they're doing there's like a whole poem that was put out, and it's like, these people are gonna die and then I'm coming after you type of thing. So it's very suspenseful, had me on the seat of my pants type of thing. It reminded me a lot of Bones, that TV show, mainly because it's probably like the FBI, but the crime solving component of it. If you've seen that show, but I definitely wouldn't recommend it now. But I used to watch it back in the day, and I really enjoyed like the crime solving aspect of it. But yeah, I've heard people attributed it to similarly to Criminal Minds, but I know nothing about that show, so I just thought I'd mention it if you're familiar with that. There are perspectives of the killer, which didn't really bother me, but I just thought I'd mention it. I rated book 1 4 stars. Really, really loved it. Firestorm is book 2. It's my least favorite out of the series. Read it 3.5. Kind of dealt more along the lines of like family relationships, character development, that type of thing. Less suspenseful in my opinion. Some of the final things that happened I felt like were a little bit too convenient, or didn't make quite as much sense. But book 3 is Dead End. Again, as another 4 stars. Great into the series. Highly recommend the series as a whole. There is elements of spiritual warfare in it, so I would rate the Christian faith rating for that series as a whole, for all 3 books, probably a 1 to 2 star type rating, considering there's spiritual warfare in there too. So kind of like light everyday faith. They do get into a little bit more discussions about faith and things like that. But yeah. Then I switched gears and I wanted to go into fantasy. So I picked up a book that I have owned for a little while, but I hadn't picked it up, and I'm so glad I did, finally. So that is A Forest of Stolen Memories by Callie Thomas. This I had thought was a retelling, but I would say it has elements of fairy tale retellings in it, or has that vibe going on to it, but it's its own story. So what it's about this woman named Rose, and she's lost her memory. She mentally wakes up being married to some guy that she doesn't recognize. She doesn't know him. So she has a wrong feeling about it, so she runs away. She runs to this enchanted forest and meets this guy who's in there, and she's like, please help me escape this prince dude. I don't even know who he is. So he agrees to help her, and things go from there. So, I really, really loved the storyline. I rated this 4.5 stars. So fun. I read it super quick, which is saying a lot for physically reading a book. I read it in like 2 days. There may be some allegorical elements in it. You could possibly consider it allegory for God. In here, there's a being in here that has similar elements to God. So the author is Christian, so I don't know if she meant to do that or not, but you could possibly consider it that. I will say the only thing I would caution about this book is it is passionate. There's no explicit scenes, like they don't have sex or anything like that, but the descriptions, like them kissing, is a little bit more than I typically read. So if you're familiar with my reading tastes, I'm typically on the more conservative side. Like I usually tend to get uncomfortable at that type of thing. I'm not super duper picky about that, but I tend to be a little bit more reserved in that respect. So this is more than I typically read. It did not bother me though. And that may be because I enjoyed the story so much. But it also, like, it didn't give you, it gave you a little bit more detail than I typically read, but not way too much detail, if that makes any sense. So I will say, There are kind of more descriptions of, like a little bit more kissing, a little bit more feelings of desire, that type of thing. Um, so I would caution you, if you are at all sensitive to that topic, I would possibly avoid this series. It's a duology, or be very, very cautious about reading it. Because I'm surprised that I was fine with it, just because it's a little bit more than I usually read. But I will just say that. So, as far as the Christian faith rating, I would say probably like a 0 out of 3. It's clean in the sense that there are no explicit scenes, there's no cussing. So, book 2 is A Sea of Golden Chains, and this one's a mermaid book. I love mermaid books, so I was very excited about this. But yes, what if a merman captured you and your heart? So this is about the Rose's sister. This is Marigold. Marigold disappeared in book 1, and you find out what happens to her in book 2. So this is kind of like a Little Mermaid retelling, but the human is turned into a mermaid, which is so fascinating. I was hooked on reading this world and just finding out what's going on and reading their merfolk culture. It was fascinating to me. I loved it. I love the underwater scenes. It's not entirely set underwater, but a good, a decent chunk of it is, and I was fascinated. This one, I'll say, so fun. Loved it. I rated it 4.5 stars. Again, it is more passionate, even more than book 1, because the merfolk are kind of more, they're not human, so they have more animalistic tendencies. So they don't really have a personal bubble. They are more physically close to each other, if that makes sense. But again, it does not, there's no fade to black. Well, near the end there is, like, what's gonna, like, it's not overly detailed or anything, but what's gonna happen. That's at the very, very, very end of the book. But it has no on page scenes or anything like that. It is more detailed, like more talk of desire, more talk of like grunts and groans and things like that. Like, not terrible, but I mean, like, I used to read smut, so like this is very mild compared to that, but it is, like I said, more than I typically read, but it was still clean. I hope I'm explaining this well. Yes, so I would also rate this a 0 out of 3 for Christian faith rating. Not Christian, but the author is. I'm pretty sure. And there's no cussing or anything. So, next I read Mountain of Dragon and Sacrifice by Tara Grace. This is part of a multi-author series. It's called the Sacrificed Heart series. They're more like novella length, so they're kind of short. I rated it 3 stars, probably because I wanted a little bit more as far as like the romance goes, because, well, let me backtrack. Let me tell you what it's about. So this young woman is a part of a village, and every year the village makes a human sacrifice to this dragon to prevent the dragon from completely destroying their village. So she is sacrificed, left on this mountain, and the dragon comes and gets her, but he doesn't kill her. He takes her off to his castle, and things go from there. So, they are friends for a while, and I feel like then they're talking about spending the rest of their lives together. So there isn't too much of an in-between. Like, I felt like there should have been a little bit more attraction or a little bit more romance building, but I think that's because of the length of the book, maybe. But I feel like that was just a little bit more would have made me happy. But it's still really cute. Good palate cleanser. The dragon was very unique. I've never read a dragon like that before. Interesting concept. Good palate cleanser. As far as Christian faith rating, it's not It's not Christian, it's secular, so I'd say a 0 out of 3, clean secular fiction. Next book I read was The Smeraldo Flower by J.F. Rogers. This was actually a subscriber request, so if you recommended this to me, I thank you, because it was a good one. I rated it 5 stars. It is very, very short. It's very, very short. So I felt like it read more like its own fairy tale, like instead of like a retelling where you get a little bit more detail. It's like the bare bones, like it's a good story, but it's not a ton of detail type of thing, if that makes sense. Side note, it is also Christian, specifically Catholic, because it's set in 15th century Italy, so you get like mentions of like father so and so, you know. So that was interesting. Both the main characters are Christian, and they talk about Christianity and what it's about. I'm really struggling here. This young woman is mysteriously hired to go and paint this flower, and she shows up at this rundown mansion. She meets the owner, and he's kind of like Beauty and the Beast type of thing, where he's like a recluse, and Phantom of the Opera too. Like he has like this mask where you never see his face, so you don't know what's under there. So it's an interesting mashup of like Beauty and the Beast and Phantom of the Opera. It's really cute, really fun. Really enjoyed it. I would rate it 1 out of 3, like I said, for a Christian faith rating. And then I read, potentially, I'm pretty sure it's going to be my favorite fantasy series to date. Oh, I'm so excited. So that would be the first book is Fierce Heart by Tara Grace, and this was actually recommended, I think I heard it from Sarah, from Sarah's Tangled Tales. So thank you, Sarah, for the recommendation. It was a good one. So this series is secular. It is a fantasy series. The first book is about Essie. She is a human princess. She is set up to be in an arranged marriage with an elf named Farandel. The reason why they're put in this marriage is to prevent their countries from going to war and annihilating each other, basically. And Farandel just so happens to be their greatest elf warrior. Like, I'm talking like he can wipe out a whole army just by himself. So he is a pretty dangerous reputation type of guy. But it's them falling in love with each other, finding out who they are. You get to know more about Farandel and his backstory. Is he really who people say he is? There is some PTSD type stuff in here from Farandel just because of his past of being a warrior. But this series checks out all the things that I love about romantasy. Like, it's romance, fantasy elements. There's magic in here. Like, the elves have different like capabilities, like gifts type of thing. You know, it's clean. The world building is excellent. The relationships are excellent. They feel like, realistic. They talk to each other. You know, it's all around just everything I love. And I rated book 1 5 stars. I moved very quickly on to some more in the series. I read 4 more books in the series. It was a good time. All five of these books are 5 stars. I'm currently reading the 6th book right now. Hope to finish the series in December. But I also read Warbound, which is book 2, Deathwind, which is book 3, Troll Prince, which is book 4, and Elf Prince, which is actually book 1, but in Farandel's perspective. So I love that. I love reading the guy's perspective and things. So yes, I highly, highly recommend. If you love fantasy, you should check out Fierce Heart. The new cover design is gorgeous. Love them. I actually bought myself some for a Christmas present to me. So I'm really excited to show them off to you in the mail soon, or once I get them in the mail. So yeah, hopefully the series will continue being awesome, and I will be able to tell you it's my favorite series of fantasy books of all time. The author, side note, is a Christian. So the books are, I would say, are 0 to 3. They're secular, but the author is Christian, and they're very clean. I'm talking like, even though they're in arranged marriage, they take a while to kiss. I don't think they consummate their marriage until, like, if I remember correctly, book 4 or 5. Pretty sure it's book 5, actually. And the way it's described, it's very, very light, like a very light fade to black scene. It's more of an emotional side of things versus like the physical side of things. I mean, like they're kissing and whatever, but it's more like an emotional step for them. So yeah, it's clean. Yeah. So those are all 14 books. This is the second time I'm filming this, so hopefully I was more coherent this time. Let me know if you have read any of these, if you plan to read any of them. I always love when y'all tell me if I inspired you to read a book, and that's one of my favorite things ever. If we have similar opinions, if we have different opinions, I love chatting about books. So please, please leave me a comment. Talk to me, please. That sounds weird. Anyways, thank y'all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, y'all.